Most people don't think much about eating in front of the TV. It feels harmless, even comforting. You finish work, turn on a show, and suddenly dinner becomes something automatic, almost background noise. On the surface, it looks like a simple way to relax, but there is a hidden issue here. Your brain stops treating food as a conscious experience. When you eat while watching something, your attention is split. You are no longer fully aware of what, how much, or why you are eating. The act of eating becomes secondary while the screen becomes primary. This shift might seem small, but it changes the way your body processes hunger and satisfaction. Most people assume they are still in control because they are physically choosing the food. They think, I'm just watching TV while eating, nothing changes. But control is not only about choice, it is about awareness. And awareness is exactly what gets reduced. Over time, this leads to a subtle disconnect. You finish a meal but don't remember how it tasted. You might feel full later than expected, or sometimes not satisfied at all, even after eating enough. That confusion is not random. It is a result of divided attention during eating. The real problem is not the TV itself. It is what happens to your perception of food when your brain stops treating meals as a focused activity. This creates a pattern where eating becomes automatic rather than intentional. And that pattern builds quietly over time. To understand why this happens, you need to look at how habits are formed. The brain works by linking actions with context. When you repeatedly eat in front of a screen, your brain starts associating food with stimulation, not nourishment. This means eating is no longer a standalone activity. It becomes attached to distraction. And over time, distraction becomes part of the eating process itself. For example, imagine someone eating dinner while watching a series. At first, they are aware of both the food and the show. But after a few minutes, attention shifts almost entirely to the screen. The chewing becomes automatic, portions disappear without conscious tracking. The meal ends, but there is little memory of it. Another example is snacking. People often say they are just having something small while watching something. But the combination of low attention and easy access to food creates a loop. The more distracted you are, the less you notice how much you eat. Standard advice like just eat less or be mindful often fails here because it ignores the environment. Willpower is weak when your attention is constantly pulled elsewhere. The problem is not discipline, it is design. The situation is structured in a way that removes natural stopping signals like taste awareness or satiety recognition. There are a few key mistakes most people make without realizing it. First, they assume multitasking during meals is neutral. In reality, it reduces the brain's ability to register fullness signals properly. When attention is elsewhere, the feedback loop between stomach and brain becomes less precise. Second, they underestimate portion distortion. When distracted, people tend to eat faster and more than they intended. Not because they are hungry, but because consumption is no longer guided by awareness. Third, they normalize emotional eating without recognizing it. TV or content becomes a trigger that signals relax and consume, which can slowly shift eating from a biological need to a behavioral habit tied to stimulation. In the short term, this leads to mild discomfort, feeling too full, snacking without noticing, or finishing meals without satisfaction. In 5 to 10 years, the pattern becomes more structural. People often report irregular eating habits, reduced sensitivity to hunger cues, and a tendency to overeat during passive activities. Over a longer horizon, 10 to 20 years, this can contribute to a stable disconnect between appetite regulation and actual energy needs. It is not about one meal or one habit, but about repeated reinforcement of unconscious eating behavior. The solution is not to completely remove TV or entertainment from life. That is unrealistic and unnecessary. The key change is separation of attention. The simplest approach is to create a clear boundary. Meals are for eating, not for consumption of content. This means that during meals, the only input your brain processes should be food itself. Practically, this can be done in a structured way. Start by choosing at least one meal per day where you eat without any screen, no phone, no TV, no background video, just food and time. At first, this feels uncomfortable because the brain is used to stimulation. But after a few days, something changes. You start noticing taste, texture, and fullness earlier. This is the body's natural feedback system reactivating. The reason this works is simple. Attention restores regulation. When you focus on eating, your brain can correctly interpret signals from the stomach and adjust intake naturally. You don't need strict control, you just need accurate perception. This approach is stable because it does not rely on restriction. It relies on restoring a natural function that already exists. If you look at everything together, the pattern becomes clear. Eating in front of the TV is not just a habit, it is a condition that slowly reshapes how your brain processes food, attention, and satisfaction. In the short term, nothing dramatic changes. Meals feel the same, routines feel unchanged. But within a year, awareness during eating begins to weaken. You rely more on external cues than internal signals. After 5 years, many people notice they eat more automatically, often without strong hunger signals. Meals become less structured and more reactive to environment and mood. After 10 years, the gap between eating and awareness can become a stable pattern, where food intake is guided more by habit loops than by physiological need. To change this, you don't need a complex system. You only need one consistent rule. At least one daily meal without screens, eaten slowly with attention on the food itself. That single change begins to rebuild the connection between hunger, satisfaction, and awareness. Over time, this is not about control, it is about restoring clarity. When attention returns to eating, the body does the rest naturally without extra effort or external management. When you put all of this together, the pattern becomes very clear. Eating in front of the TV is not just a harmless habit, it is a repeated condition that gradually reshapes how attention, hunger, and satisfaction are processed. The change is not sudden, which is why most people never notice it happening in real time. At first, nothing feels different. A meal with a screen still tastes normal, and the routine feels relaxing. But over months and years, the brain becomes less sensitive to internal signals and more dependent on external stimulation during eating. This creates a subtle shift where food is no longer fully experienced, only consumed. If you remove that constant distraction, even partially, the system starts to reset. Attention returns to the meal, and with it, the ability to recognize fullness and satisfaction more accurately. Over time, this leads to more stable eating patterns without forcing control or restriction. The key change is not discipline, but awareness restored through consistency.